freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same. And if you and I don't do this, then you and I may well spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it once was like in America when men were free.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode number 297 of Gun Freedom Radio, where we engage, we educate, and we inform. We are brought to you by azfirearms.com, your nationwide hometown gun shop. I am one of your hosts, Cheryl Todd.
And I'm the other guy, Dan Todd. Our theme today is the Pew Pew Jew. Our guest is Yehuda Remer. Yehuda is known as the Pew Pew Jew and also the author of Safety On, an introduction to the world of firearms for children. Being an Orthodox Jewish family that immigrated from Europe, Yehuda's grandfather experienced firsthand of horrors of what happened in the nation when the citizens are disarmed and restricted from owning the means to protect their lives and loved ones. When Yehuda said never again, he has a personal understanding of what that really means.
Absolutely. Well, welcome back to the show, Yehuda. It's been too long.
Oh, and thank you so much for having me. It's so great to be back.
Absolutely. My goodness. So I really want to start right there where Danny led us in, this whole idea of never again. And I feel like there are some parallels going on right now here in our own beautiful, amazing, wonderful United States of America to what sort of led up to the horrors in Europe. And you've been sharing in little tiny bite-sized pieces on Instagram memories of your grandfather and his life and some of the things that he went through as a boy. So I thought maybe you could start there and lead us into that story.
Yeah, so my grandfather grew up in a city called Lodz. It was in Poland. And, you know, it was amazing growing up with him. He never really talked about the Holocaust. He never really mentioned what he went through. He had tattooed, he had the numbers tattooed on his arm. So I knew he wasn't just, went to one of the smaller camps. I mean, he was in Auschwitz and survived Auschwitz. But as I was growing older, and when I went to Israel for a sabbatical, and during that year, I made a Holocaust-oriented trip to Europe. And when I came back, I kind of built a new connection with my grandfather, because here I am visiting all these places that he lived the horrors of. And one day he just opened up to me and to my grandmother. We were sitting together, and my grandmother turns to me afterwards, and he's like, I've been married to him for 60 years and he's never once talked about that. She goes, I did not know that's what happened to him. And he was 14 years old when he went into Auschwitz, and he was so small that they kind of just issue, here's a shirt, here's pants. If it doesn't fit you and it slows you down, too bad. So my great-grandfather, he actually traded in his daily ration of bread for a belt, so that my grandfather can have a belt wrapped around him, which my family still has to this day, that belt. We still have it. But he was pulling gold teeth out of dead bodies at age 14. He was in 11 different camps. And this is before I got into firearms even. I started really educating myself and studying the Holocaust and studying the horrors and the history and the pre-Holocaust Europe. And one thing that, really hit me hard was when Hitler came to power, one of the first things he did was enforce gun registration. Is that if you were a Jew, not only were you not allowed to own guns and stuff like that, but before that, everyone had to register their firearms. And of course, in the name of public safety, right? Which is what we hear now. It's all about public safety. And one thing leads to another, and then obviously gun registration leads to gun confiscation, which led to 1938 Kristallnacht, when thousands of businesses were destroyed in Europe, and which leads eventually to the Holocaust. And for me, the term "never again" is not just lip service, right? There's a lot of Jews, unfortunately, that say "never again, never again," but then they rely on the government to save them from, whatever anti-Semitic attacks are happening, or if you need guards in the shul, in your synagogue. Well, yeah, guards are good, but you're your own first line of defense. So for me, never again really took on the persona of never again means nothing if you're not willing to do something about it. And taking my life in my hands, educating myself, training, getting a license to carry, all of that to me is what never again truly means.
Absolutely. My goodness.
Yeah, I just don't understand. That's, the problems and the issues that all the Jewish people went through back then, and how they can't, they depend on the government. A lot of them want their government to protect them. When the government destroyed them in the past, you would think that you would learn from that and say, never again, and do something about it.
Sort of a wish rather than a plan. And you have set in motion more of a never again as a plan, not only for yourself, but for your children, for your wife, for your family. And, going back again to the first generation of your family that came to the United States, was that your grandfather? Was that your parents? Who was the first generation? And what was the prevailing attitude toward firearm ownership at that time in your family?
So it's interesting. So I know both sets of my grandparents came after Europe. My parents were all, both my parents, my mother and my father were both born in America, but my grandparents all came from Europe. And on my father's side, again, guns were just not a thing. No, I didn't grow up around guns. I didn't grow up around firearms. It was never talked about. Yeah, I had my Nerf guns and, my little cap guns and stuff like that, but actual firearms, actual Second Amendment conversations it wasn't a thing in my household growing up. I do know my father's side never talked about guns. They all thought I was crazy when I first started getting into guns. And then on my mother's side, my grandfather joined after being liberated by Americans at the end of the war. He immigrated to America. He actually joined the Air Force, the U.S. Air Force. So he was a veteran. He owned some kind of rifle. I don't know what rifle. I never saw it. They got rid of it before I was into firearms. So I don't know, but I don't think he was necessarily pro gun, pro Second Amendment. He was a gun owner. So I don't know really how far how much they were into firearms as I am.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's a different than back, even my day when my dad had guns, in the family. You wouldn't call him a pro Second Amendment. He was just a pro gun owner. And the reason was that he wasn't pro Second Amendment is because there was no threat. The threat was very minimal back then. And now it's a big threat. And so the people that do have guns have to say, I got to do something about this, right?
So, and that's kind of my next question is, you being a bridge, Yehuda, between, understanding in a very personal way what so many people, including your grandfather, endured, the horrors that so many people endured, after certain rules were put in place, laws were put in place, these well-meaning common sense, for your own good gun laws. And now the things that are being proposed under the Biden-Harris initial actions, which tells you right there, this is just the start of what they want to do. Um, what what can you say to people? How does this hit your ear? And what can you say to people as maybe a caution to say, we really need to focus up here and pay attention, even if we're not gun owners, if you care at all about our children and our children's generation and what direction we're going, this is kind of like all hands on deck time.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think by 2021, people have made up their minds, right? So I can scream from the top of a hill, right? Guys, pay attention. This is exactly how Nazism started. Exactly. This is literally the predecessor to gun registration, gun confiscation. I can say that. People who follow me on Instagram, people who follow me on Facebook, Twitter, all of these things, they either are like, yeah, man, never again, we're never going to let it happen. Or people are just like, you're crazy. It will never happen. I think at this point, and it doesn't mean I'm going to silence myself and I'm not going to stop yelling from the top of my, at the top of my lungs. However, I think at this point, it's if people haven't woken up by now, I don't think they either aren't going to wake up or they just don't care. They don't think it'll happen. Like, well, this is America, right? Things like that don't happen in America. Well, Germany was considered, the epicenter of grace and innovation at that time. Everyone said like, oh, please, Germany, they would never do something like that. I mean, even as reports were coming out of the concentration camps, there were Jews around Europe who are like, no, it's not happening. Come on, that can't be true. And then before you know it, you're in the cattle cars.
Well, I was looking in some Time magazines, and Hitler got Man of the Year award in Time magazine.
1933, I think it was.
Yeah, Man of the Year.
Yeah.
And
So
Himmler too.
Crazy conspiracy theorist even back then. If you were like, something's not smelling right, something doesn't feel right. So go on with what you were saying. The next thing you know, you wake up and you're the one that's in the cattle car.
Yeah. Look, I have a contingency plan. I have friends within driving distance of my house. Not necessarily like when I say driving distance, a couple hours, but they're like, hey man, if you need to make an escape because they're coming after the Jews, we're here for you. You don't have to worry. So, and I've had conversations with people in my community about it. I'm like, guys, you don't care to even make a plan. You don't even want to hear it. However, if God forbid something happens, you're not coming with me. Sorry. My mission, my focus is to save me, my wife, and my kids. You guys are all a very distant second to my mission, and that is my family.
Yeah.
So, it's just like I said, you either are up and see what's going on, or you just aren't paying attention, and you're gonna get caught with your pants down type of thing, right? That's literally what's gonna happen.
Well, Yehuda, it's sort of like, if with your mindset, then you'll be able to see the little advances that the government takes to get to where they want to go. Whereas the person that's not caring, they're not even going to notice. It's going to be too late, just like it was in Germany. They fed them small increments of stuff, regulations, and to a point where, okay, now you can't defend yourself. Now we're going to come put you in boxcars and take you to.
Yeah,
camps.
no.
But if they would have done that immediately, they would have fought them. But
no, I mean, absolutely. There's Ben Carson got dragged through the mud years ago when he said, if the Jews didn't turn in their guns, the Holocaust could have been drastically different. Now, everything's up to God. If God wanted it to happen, then it was going to happen one way or another. However, look at the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, right? The Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, in essence, opened a third front.
Yes.
I mean, the Jews of Warsaw fighting against the Nazis literally lasted longer than both the French army and the Polish army lasted against the Germans. They had to get thousands upon thousands of soldiers into Warsaw to fight against a band of 2,000-3,000 Jews.
Wow, that is awesome.
And this was after the liquidation. Imagine if Jews woke up and were like, you know what? We need an army of 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 people to fight back.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you literally would have had a third front opened up, and who knows what that could have meant for the war in general. I mean, again, I'm not saying that it could have changed, but it's a very interesting hypothesis to think of.
Absolutely. You use the word liquidation. Can you explain that?
Oh, well, the Germans came in and literally liquidated the Jews. I mean, came in, threw them in ghettos,
Took everything they owned, everything
took
they'd
everything
ever
they owned,
worked
organized
for.
them in one little area, and then when there was time, they're like, all right, we're taking you to a better place. And depending on where you were in Europe, lots of people ended up in Auschwitz. A lot of people, Bergen-Belsen, Treblinka, Dachau, Mauthausen. I mean, tons and tons of different concentration camps. A lot of them were death camps. A lot of them were working camps. But they liquidated. I mean, again, Warsaw had 300,000 Jews in it before the Nazis came in.
300,000.
300,000. And then by the time the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, which actually I think technically started April 19th, I think it was, or maybe that was the last, like, the big battle. But by the end, there were, I think, a couple hundred left, maybe a couple thousand left that managed to get out and survive. I mean, if that's not what liquidating is, I mean, I don't know what is.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree. I just didn't want people to be scratching their head going, wait a minute, what does that term mean?
Right. Yeah. No, it's
and,
exactly what it means. They literally liquidated the ghettos and the cities of Jews so that no Jews remained.
And they say that could never happen again, but yet we see it happening in different forms, but the same thing in countries all over the world.
Well, and it starts with an othering, right? So we start focusing our attention through the media and different ways of people, acceptable bigotry. And then as soon as you've got this other group over there where it's okay for everybody to, vilify them, right? And diminish them as human beings. And we clearly saw, I mean, you can go back and see step for step the marketing campaign against the Jewish people in that time in Europe. And I'm not going to answer the question for people. I'm just going to say, hey, think about it for a minute, put your mind to it, and tell yourself, tell your spheres of influence, who do you see that happening to currently? And why might that be happening currently? And if it happens to be people who are firearms owners, why? Why is there such a push for that to happen? And of course, I'm speaking to our audience out there when I say these things, and I challenge people to think for themselves and listen to the things, the packaging of the phraseology that you hear on the nightly news, in air quotes. But there's always a reason that someone is saying something to you. What do you feel like you're seeing on the landscape there, Yehuda?
So the good thing is, they can vilify gun owners as much as they want, and I mean, they've been doing it for years. However, we have the guns. You know what I'm saying? It's not like we have a means to defend ourselves, if need be. So I'm not really worried more. I think there's enough gun owners out there who really would not give up their firearms to the point where, I mean, you have the largest civilian army just from gun owners. So they can vilify us all they want. But it will come to a point that if they try to take our guns, our army is much bigger than their army.
And I want to take you back to, you talked about the small contingent of people in Europe that didn't give up their guns and created that third front. And then I also want to take us both to how our nation was founded. The people that fought, bled, starved, and died to have the opportunity to write this Constitution and Bill of Rights, our recipe book, our roadmap, whatever you want to think of it as.
Blueprint for life.
Blueprint for life, right? And how did that happen? That happened because shopkeepers and farmers had their firearms, didn't give them up at Lexington and Concord when the most powerful fighting force on the planet at that time, Great Britain, rode up to alleviate the citizenry of their firearms and ammunition stocks. And they said, no, it's a full sentence. NO together is a full sentence. They said it, they backed it up. And our Second Amendment and our firearms, that is our or else clause. Do you agree with that, Yehuda?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And what's interesting, though, is just a small correction. The Jews of Warsaw didn't have guns. They started ambushing Nazi patrols, stealing their weaponry, smuggling weapons into the ghetto. So they actually gave up their guns, but realized, if we're going to have even a chance of survival, Sam Colt made, was a God made man, Sam Colt made them equal. I mean, if they thought, they realized that their only means of survival, the only way to be equal was to fight fire with fire.
Boy, absolutely. And I thank you for that correction. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. Yep.
The problem I see, with this whole thing is that the government is doing exactly what they did back then at the start. Okay, we just want you to register your guns. We have to save the children. We need to register your gun. Now, so we all eventually are going to get to a point that we're going to have to register our guns if we want to be lawful citizens. If we don't want to be lawful citizens and we don't register our guns, then we have a lot of consequences could happen over that, right? So now they've registered all your guns. They know where they are. They're going to come and get them. They'll do it. Yehuda, if right now somebody knocked on your door and there's 7 policemen there saying, we're taking your guns, you don't have a chance, right?
Well,
the only chance you have is your next door neighbor sees that you're getting raided and he can flee and get away. But so they're not stupid. They know what they're doing. Look at, California did the same thing. You can have a 50 caliber. You just need to let us know that you have it. And then once everybody registered their guns, and by the way, if you don't register your guns, you're going to go to jail and you're going to be away from your family. And so now that all their 50s were registered, they said, well, if you don't get them out of the state within 30 days or whatever it was, you are going to be arrested and the guns are going to be confiscated. So you have to take it out of the state. So they know what they're doing. And
no, yeah, of course.
The problem is that we are kind of just sitting there waiting instead of fighting them now and saying, no, we're not going to register our guns. No, we're not going to do this. We're kind of complying. Well, it's only AR-15s. I don't even have an AR-15. What do I care if they take our AR-15 away? Right?
It's only bump stock.
Right. It's only a bump stock.
So what do I care?
So, I fear that we need to do the work now, not have to do the work later, not have to fight later.
Absolutely.
So very well said, both of you. And I want to shift gears a little bit with Yehuda. Now, obviously, you've had a lot of tragedy in your family's background, as we've been talking about. But honestly, you, Yehuda, are one of the funniest guys that we know. You've created some hilarious graphic tees, and you have a few books now. Some are serious and some are funny. And I just want to talk about that. This one was your very first, and it was serious, Safety On. And then this one was funny. I think it was your second one, the ABCs of guns. It's like, you know, instead of like A is for Apple, you've got A is for,
AR and
AR, Armalite,
ammunition.
Did you send those to all the congressmen so they'd understand what
I think
AR-18 is?
who you wrote these for was the
I
congressman.
sent copies to MSNBC and CNN with little tags that C is for clips, M is for magazines.
I love it. Oh my gosh. And then this one is one of your more recent ones, and truly my favorite because, it is those 27 words that are our Second Amendment. That's it. That's the line between slavery and freedom. And so this is just a beautifully illustrated book, and for kids, but for us big kids too. So talk to us a little bit about all of these ventures that you have going on.
Yeah, so it's interesting. My first book, Safety On, I wrote out of a necessity because I realized that I wanted to educate my children on firearm safety. And I found that there were no real good resources, right? Not knocking Eddie Eagle program, but all they do is talk about what to do if they find a gun somewhere it's not supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot more. And I'm not knocking Project Child Safe, but all they really do is here's some free locks. And that's not really gun safety because, let's be honest, I think a majority of people that you and I know, and I feel safe to say a majority of gun owning Americans don't use those locks. They have a safe, but no one really uses those locks. So there was a necessity that I realized had to be filled. And that's where Safety On came in. It's a book that touches on all aspects of gun safety, from range rules, 4 cardinal rules, just keeping your guns clean as a matter of respect to them. You got to respect the firearm, locking them up when you're not in use. And the book is told through the eyes of a little boy. That way it's more of a peer-to-peer conversation rather than an adult saying, don't do this, don't do that. So I wrote that one, converted it to a coloring book. So there's a coloring book version as well. Then we have the ABCs of guns, which I wrote because I was sick and tired of teaching my kids A is for Apple. And let's be honest, X is not for xylophone, okay? I don't care how you spell xylophone. X is not for xylophone because it doesn't even sound like it. So X is for X marks the spot, right? You get that little crosshair in the middle there. But it just came to the point where I figured that would just be a super fun way for parents to educate their children on different parts of a gun. Because let's say your child somehow picks up or finds a gun and they're standing there, and you obviously don't want to just grab it from them because, God forbid, something can, it can discharge. But if you say, hey, take your finger off the trigger, well, instead of a kid picking up the gun, looking at it, pointing at it himself, saying, oh, where's the trigger? My 4-year-old right now, he walks around with his Nerf gun, and when I see him with his finger on the trigger, I'm like, buddy, finger off the trigger. And immediately he doesn't even have to look at the gun, he just does it. So that's why I wrote ABCs of Guns, a way to keep parents interested in educating their children. And also, let's be honest, it's a fun book, right? Like for any age.
It is. And look who sponsored it.
Yes, the Second Amendment Foundation. They came in the clutch. They sponsored the book, and I'm forever grateful to them.
That is fantastic. And one of my favorites is the folding stock. Isn't that the part that makes the gun much more dangerous, according to one of those ridiculous speeches that we hear the politicians make?
Absolutely.
The part that folds down, that's the really scary
The
part.
folding thing they call the thing there, that thing there.
And then this guy.
And then there's 27 words, which it's funny, out of all 6 of my books that I have out, 27 words, I think really to me is the most special one, because we as adults and as gun owners, we educate our children to shoot. We teach them to shoot. We teach them gun safety. And if you ask most people, why do we do that? Well, most people say like, oh, we just want them to be safe. But in reality, there's a much deeper level of understanding of why we, teach our children to shoot. Well, because we have the Second Amendment that we're allowed to do that. So my vision for this book was, you can train your child to be the next John Wick, but if they don't appreciate the Second Amendment and how it protects our other freedoms, then who cares if they can shoot well? It doesn't make a difference.
Yeah.
They need to understand the freedoms that we hold dear are protected by 27 words.
Exactly. And it's the legal, constitutional expression of our God-given, our creator-given, our natural rights to protect our one and only God-given life. So, there will be people out there that are like, no, the Constitution doesn't give you your rights. We understand that. We're just,
Yeah, exactly. We all understand that.
Absolutely. And the sponsor who stepped up for this one is the Firearms Policy Coalition. This is another powerful organization. Talk to us about what they do, and the Second Amendment Foundation. What do they do? They're sort of like that front line out there nationally helping preserve these things, right?
Absolutely. So people across social media, I mean, I'm not going to get into the whole NRA fiasco, but there's obviously a lot of disenchanted people when it comes to the NRA nowadays. And a lot of people always ask me, like, where should we give our money? We want to support an organization. And my first two answers, and not because they sponsored my books, is the Second Amendment Foundation, the Firearms Policy Coalition. And that's because they are literally on the front lines. Every legal battle that you see in defense of the Second Amendment right now across the country, all of it is coming from these two. I mean, you also have Gun Owners of America, which I'm a big supporter of as well. But these two in particular are just doing fantastic work in defending our rights on I'm not even going to say daily basis, a minute by minute basis, because they are in every state, in every county, and they are just destroying everything in their path. So I'm a huge supporter of both 2AF and FPC.
Absolutely. And I want to apologize on Dan's behalf. I know he would if he was sitting here. I think he's having a little asthma, something going on. Everything is blooming here in Arizona, and holy cow, our allergies are murdering us. So he stepped away for just a second to catch his breath. And so I wanted to ask you, you are the Pew Pew Jew. I want you to show people your shirt and your coffee cup.
It's the same design, so I'll just let's see. There we go. Rabbi blessed, God approved, the Pew Pew Jew.
That's awesome. And so you lead with the fact that you are of that particular faith, of the Jewish faith. And so would you say that out there in the interwebs, and welcome back, are you okay?
I don't know. Allergies are really bad right now.
Absolutely. Out there on social media, would you say you have more followers who are, of the similar faith, of the Jewish faith, or do you even know?
I mean, I definitely know I have some actually nice contingent of Jewish followers. I'm gonna put money that most of them are not Orthodox, which again, I don't care, but I have people, left and right reaching out to me, buying my camo yarmulkes and saying, hey, you're giving us faith back in, our Jewish faith, just because, see someone who of the Orthodox persuasion out there defending America, defending the Second Amendment, it puts our faith back in Judaism. I have people telling me that I inspired them to, people in Chicago get their FOID card, get a gun, train, learn. I mean, I'm getting messages like this across the board, but as well as I'm also getting tons of messages which are so special to me from people like, hey, we're not Jewish, but we support the hell out of what you're doing and anything we can do to help you. So I'm reaching people, I'm making a difference with people's mindset. And all the while I'm doing it as an Orthodox Jew. I mean, I don't shy away from the fact that I don't do things on Saturdays, as you're very well aware of. I miss a lot of things because, I mean, our buddy Kevin Sona, right? He begged me to come to the Florida Carry event or whatever it's called, and he was trying. I mean, God bless him, right? He was trying everything in his power to try to like work around my restrictions, my schedule, my restrictions on Friday night to Saturday night, just to get me there and speak. I'm like, listen, I'm not sleeping at the campsite. He's like, well, can't you just walk back to the hotel? I'm like, isn't like a 20-mile walk? Like, I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. Like, this is not happening. So, you do, I do miss out on a lot of things. But the way I see it is, if I'm going to be successful, if I'm going to be making a difference in people's lives, it won't be on Saturday. Whether you see me, yeah.
And God is clearly blessing your efforts, because look how effective you have been and that you are. And you can't, like, if there's everything's on the weekend, right? Gun rights policy conference, the biggest conference in the year, everything happens on the weekends, and you honor your restrictions and obligations, and yet still you are so effective, and you are in so many places, and you just maximize, and God helps you maximize what when you are available.
Right.
So I think that's fantastic, and I love it that Kevin was like, but what if we?
Well, Kevin
how
was
about if we?
Yeah,
Kevin
exactly.
was trying to change
amazing.
Saturday to Thursday. He was going to say, let's officially make Saturday Thursday.
Yeah, there you go.
To get you to come.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I mean, I appreciate. Like, I tell everybody, I'm like, really, I know, Cheryl, you and I are on a planning committee together, and I say it all the time to you guys. I want what's best for AmCon, right? That's what I want. I don't need you to arrange around my schedule. I appreciate it, but this is the cards life has dealt me, and I'm okay with it. I want, if I'm part of something, although let's call it my presence there might enhance it, it doesn't mean that you have to arrange it and cater to my needs. I want whatever we're planning, whatever we're doing, to be as successful as possible. So if that means that it's, you'll get more traffic, more followers, more exposure on a Saturday, then that's what I want. So, it is what it is, but like you said, I'm making headway, and I'm inspiring people. I'm getting out there. I mean, I know I have 2 new books coming. I know one of them it's public at this point. The second one, I mean, you saw, Cheryl. I know you were gracious enough to write a review for it, but I told you the other people who wrote a review for it, and you have to be making a difference to have those people on the back of your book. So
absolutely, we're talking about your Sabbath, which is from Friday at sundown, yes, to Saturday at sundown. So Sunday, I mean, if we just start doing more stuff on Sunday, we can get you, at many more things. But before we move off of the books and the graphic tees and stuff like that, what is the book that I don't have in front of me that you just alluded to?
So I have 2 books coming out. One I can't talk about yet. However, the book that should be released in about a month from now is called 10 Little Gun Grabbers. And let me see.
Appropriate for this particular moment in history.
I don't know if we can see it, but that's
there it is.
There we go. That's 10 Little Gun Grabbers. It's basically I thought about it just because we hear so many things about gun control coming and hitting our way. And this book was literally, I wrote it in like 3 or 4 days, just kind of a knock at the gun grabbers. So, and you will laugh very hard when you see who I dedicated the book to.
You gonna tell us, or gonna wait for us?
I could tell you. I actually dedicated the book to Barack Obama,
the biggest gun salesman of all time until COVID hit. So yeah.
Exactly. So I wrote to number 44. You challenged, I accepted. So so 10 Little Gun Grabbers is dedicated to former President Barack Obama, and I'm very excited about that.
Nicely done, sir. I love.
And that's going to come out in about a month.
My aim is for May 15th. However, because of the 2-8 atmosphere right now, if I could get it out sooner, it will be out. It's going to be out as soon as possible, but definitely by May 15th.
So we do need to start wrapping up, but the graphic tees that you make, you have some that are just absolutely hilarious. And then there's a couple that would be so good for Mother's Day is coming up soon. Yes. And one of my favorites is just spent brass that are kind of steaming, and it says hotter than spent brass. Am I saying that right?
You are. Yeah. It's a 3 steaming casings from what looks to be, I mean, it was digital, so I don't even know, but it looks to be like AR-15 rounds, 5.56. And the steam comes up into the wording that says hotter than spent brass.
That's brass. I love it.
That's been a very, very, very successful shirt for me. A lot of the ladies like that one.
And there's another one that kind of gives a nod to maybe like a Marilyn Monroe kind of a figure. What's that one?
So that one is a big nod to Marilyn Monroe from Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. And there's that whole famous song where she's wearing this bubblegum pink dress, and, diamonds are a girl's best friend. So you see a woman in a short blonde hair, long pink bubblegum dress with an ammo case in one hand, and then it looks like she's sprinkling ammo, and it says ammo is a girl's best friend.
That's so awesome. Yeah, I think those would be great for Mother's Day coming up. So everybody out there listening, go to, what's your website?
Website is thepewpewjew.com.
Very good. Were you going to say something?
No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I might want one of those shirts.
He would wear it too. All right. Well, Yehuda, thank you so much for all that you do, for all this time that you've spent with us. And I want you to tell folks how they can follow everything that you do, because you're spinning a lot of plates all the time.
I am. My plates are not just spinning, but they're full. But you can find me really just any social media platform. Just look for the Pew Pew Jew. Don't forget a lot of people do and say we can't find you, but it's the Pew Pew Jew, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Maywee, or however you pronounce it, Parlor, just the Pew Pew Jew. And, I'm very active and I answer people. I actually spend about an hour a day answering emails and messages. I try to be very interactive with my followers. So you have questions, comments, hateful messages, hateful tweets. I mean, I'll respond to nearly all of it. So
very good. Well, thank you again so much. You are such a good friend. We just love you. And, I didn't mention that one of our guests today had a schedule conflict, and in like practically 10 minutes time, I was like, Yehuda, can you come on? And you were like, I'm here. It's not a Friday night. I'm here. Right.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm a photographer also, so I shoot people for money in the afternoon. So I had some time in the morning.
Yeah, with a wink.
With a wink, exactly.
Yeah. All right, fantastic. Thank you so much, Yehuda. We will talk soon.
Thanks, Yehuda.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me, guys.
Oh, bye-bye.
Wow. I don't know what happened to me there, but
oh my goodness.
hey, so
You were like, I'm like, honey,
I
take
know,
a drink.
I couldn't
Like,
bring it.
you got to step away because I can't have you pass out. And if you do pass out, I'm going to continue with the show. You realize
Well,
this, right?
you know,
But
it's because, yeah, we'll call the ambulance afterwards. So, you know, Yehuda is making these books for kids to educate kids and to teach them how to handle a gun and all the things that need to be done. And the opposite side, the people that are saying it's for the children, they just want to completely remove firearms from the equation. And the negative about that is that, first of all, you're never going to remove all the firearms.
Right.
Okay. So if you look at that and say, okay, we need to educate our children that, you know, you educate them about the knives in your drawer, you educate them about, if you can teach them responsibility at a younger age, then when they get ready to drive a car, they're going to be a lot better with that car than if you teach them not to be responsible. So the whole key is it's a lot of work, but you have to start the kids young and you teach them to be responsible, respectful, and you do teach them about dangers. You don't hide them from them. You know, the glowing rock out in the middle of the desert, don't touch that. Right?
how do you not touch a glowing rock
I
in the
know.
desert?
And the same thing with, you know, I mean, there's so many things, but if you teach them young and teach them to respect things, you can teach them at 3-4 years old to know not to touch a firearm.
Absolutely. And I love how Yehuda was talking about, you know, safety. Education goes beyond it. You know, it's a good starting place, like the locks and the Eddie Eagle, stop, don't touch, run away and tell a grown up. That's a great starting place, but don't stop there. There's so
Right.
much more, you know, to keeping people safe, and especially as children grow older and become more and more curious. And
Right.
you know, there's so much that can be taught to children through the shooting sports, right? There's focus, there's discipline, there's responsibility, there's opportunity for family time on the range or out hunting. And so it all starts with that safety. And then when you have these groups out there, right, that are really what they are is the anti-rights people, that call themselves some kind of, you know, every town for gun safety.
No,
Are they teaching anybody safety classes? I'm unaware if they are.
no. And please, I want to caution parents. You know, you tell a kid, do not touch this gun, doesn't mean that they're not going to touch the gun. It takes work. And I guess that's the reasons why the other side is so strong with what they do, because there's no work in it. You know, if you don't have to teach your kids about responsibility, safety, then you don't have to mess with it. Because, you know, darn well, you can't tell a kid, you know, don't touch the trigger, don't do this. And they understand it and they get it right at that second. But 2 hours later, then they need help again. You have to work with them.
So what if we applied that to swimming pools or
Right.
lakes, right? Or rivers. And we just said, you know,
Don't go in that water.
don't go in that water. Okay, we've done our job. We've said no, and we don't have a pool in our backyard. So we did our job and took care of our responsibility as a
The kid knows
parent.
not to go near that water.
Right, because I told them, right?
Right.
Probably a bunch of times I said don't.
Right.
Is that how we behave when there is something out there that they could encounter, a lake, a river, somebody else's
Canal.
pool, a canal? Right here in Arizona, we have a lot of open canals moving water to the agricultural areas.
We have riverbeds too, but you can't drown in our riverbeds because they're dry.
There's no water there. But then when there is, you know, so when they do encounter these things, you haven't empowered them with education about how to interact with that. I don't understand why people try to separate out, you know, those kinds of things. Why wouldn't you empower your child, your grandchildren, your nieces and nephews with all of the education that you can possibly give them? You can empower them with education and knowing how to interact with firearms and still tell them that your family's values are, well, we don't own guns and we don't want to own guns. But if you should happen to come across one, or if your friend at his house or her house shows you one, here are some basic pieces
and that's what
of
the Eddie Eagle
information that empowers you to be the responsible one in the room, the safe one in the
Right.
room.
And that's what the Eddie Eagle program is really good for.
Mhm.
They teach kids stop, don't touch, run away, call an adult.
Mhm.
That is the ideal situation for any lazy parents out there. Okay. If you don't want them
just
involved,
do
right?
that,
If you just do
that's
that,
like the lowest bar.
you can teach the kids, because we also taught that with our grandchild,
Yeah.
and it's a stepping stone.
And
And
she could sing
right.
it. She would walk around the house singing it. Like
right.
she's
And so
3
she
years
knew,
old,
and she wouldn't
singing
touch it.
She's
We had a
6
gun
now.
shop, and she would come to the gun shop and she wouldn't touch a single gun.
Right.
She wouldn't run away.
Right.
But so with that, and so, or, infants, there are infants that parents have taught them to swim.
Mhm.
Okay. So now that parent can be pretty sure to know that when the baby, gets a little older and goes next door to people that have a pool,
Mhm.
that they don't have to worry that if the kid falls in the pool, it could swim out.
Absolutely.
Right. And that's the thing, but that's a lot of work. You know how hard it is to teach an infant to swim? It takes hours and hours and hours of work. You can't just throw them in the water and expect it.
Right.
We've got a baby in our house, a baby grandchild. She's a year and a half,
Mhm.
and she has no fear of the water, and that's scary
Mhm.
because she will go to it.
Mhm.
Right. So we're working with her.
Mhm.
We're not leaving her around water by herself.
Right.
And we're working with her so that she knows that there are dangers in this water.
Absolutely.
So
All right. Well, we've got to wrap up. This was such a fun conversation, such an important conversation with Yehuda Remer. Thank you so much, Yehuda, for everything that you do and for diving in on short notice to have this conversation with us today. Thank you to our awesome listeners all over the planet. If there is internet, we have people who are eager and hungry to tune in and learn from the subject matter experts that we bring on this show every single week. And we value that. Your time is your most valuable commodity, and we recognize it, and we appreciate it. And when you take these conversations into your sphere of influence, that's where change happens. That's where minds are expanded. That's where relationships, really bonds, are deepened. Whether you find out there's things that you agree on more or disagree on more, it's an interesting part of a relationship when you can kind of have these kind of conversations and say, well, this expert that I heard said X, Y, or Z, and here's how I feel about it. I either agree or I disagree. Anyway, it's wonderful that you all are doing that in wherever you are, all across the globe. And until next time, what are we going to do all together?
we're going to make sure that I clear my throat and can breathe before I come on the air.
Yes,
Oh,
that's a good thing.
We're going to pray for our nation.
We are. We're going to pray for you can fill in the blank, right? Representatives, elected officials.
That's enough.
Like, if you want to use the word leaders, well, there are leaders in your church. There's leaders in your family.
Hey, what was so
there's
great about
leaders
Great Britain back then?
Because they put the word great in front of it.
So
We
if
could
they
be the
forget,
great U.S. if we wanted to be. We
if
just
we're
have
the
to
great,
go on a marketing campaign.
maybe that's the next
Switch
presidential
that
thing.
up.
Great U.S.
The great U.S. So yes, pray for our leaders, all of them, maybe.
You said leaders. Yes, all of them.
Even the ones that maybe you don't particularly care for.
Oh, I love them all. They're just so special. The way they tell us, the way we vote them in, and then they tell us what we can and can't do. I just love it. Isn't that wonderful?
That's very special that they do that. And we need to pray for that and pray for our abilities to speak back to that. So anyway, yes, all of them, even the ones you don't like, maybe especially the ones you don't like. Until next time, be good to each other. Have a great week, and God bless.
Bye-bye.